Okay. Well, welcome. I'm Catherine Baldwin. I'm an instruction services librarian of the University of Pittsburgh Library System, and I teach at the Bradford campus, and I'm very happy to present my work to you regarding research as personal reflection with several benefits for university students. The COVID-19 pandemic caused tremendous upheaval. 2 years in, emerging young students, young adults sometimes struggle with daily life, feeling disconnected, worrying about the future, and lacking faith in their ability to control their own lives. Today's students began university life within a culture of lockdowns, masking, online learning, hybrid courses, and unpredictable stresses. It is expected, therefore, that faculty are witnessing fallout with many university students experiencing mental health issues adversely affecting academic performance. In acknowledgement, educators must adapt teaching methods to reinvigorate students' curiosity. Empowering students through meaningful engagement gives purpose to their learning, answering the question, so what? Instruction services librarians possess a unique position to foster student participation in research grounded within personal interest. By connecting research to real-world scenarios involving personal choice and self-leadership, and collaborating on engaging learning experiences, faculty may rekindle in students a sense of hope and personal empowerment for a positive path forward. With the emergence of COVID-19 in March of 2020, most people's lives were disrupted, but especially the lives of students who are now within their first years of higher education. In addition to the emotional frustration of missing social interaction and coming of age milestones, today's students have suffered other effects. In an interdisciplinary longitudinal study by Kiss et al., it demonstrates that students with pre-pandemic history of mental ill health were most likely to experience negative impacts from the disruption of the pandemic. Depression, stress, and anxiety increased. Mental health remains a primary concern for educators and parents as their students recover from disconnection during long months of relative isolation. Female students were at increased risk for these effects because female university students outnumber male students. The effects of pandemic stress should be noted. Add to this scenario the complexity of students' daily lives, and it is apparent that mental well-being will remain a priority. As demonstrated through Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one's basic needs must be met before university students are able to prioritize high-level, self-actualizing cognitive activities, like learning through research-related instruction. The reflective aspect of deep learning can be achieved, however, if foundational needs are first met. Online learning has also yielded mixed results for this age group, whose growth of executive functions or skills was derailed by the lack of structure and the disruption of support routines. This may negatively affect students for years to come unless we address it by providing structure, guidance, and modeling. While all of this may be concerning, the negative effects from the pandemic can be mitigated by just addressing basic healthy behaviors and providing personal connection with others. For an example, engaging in outdoor activities, limiting solo screen time, eating and sleeping regularly, and planning one's day were noted for improving mental health for adolescents during the pandemic. These healthy habits will also support students as they attend university life. To summarize, the mental health complexities resulting from the pandemic illuminate the importance of social connectedness, meeting basic needs first, and the critical nature of an executive function on handling a complex life and mental well-being. Emerging young adults are a unique population. They are kind of everything all at once: nervous and excited, happy and depressed, lost and impassioned. They exist within a state of flux due to their ongoing and rapid physical, cognitive, and social development. When we consider traditional aged university students, we regard them as emerging young adults. And I have coined the term adult essence because they straddle the line between childhood and adulthood, demonstrating characteristics from each. Developmentally, people remain children until the frontal lobe of the brain fully develops. The frontal lobe enables looking ahead, predicting outcomes, making wise decisions, and managing oneself through daily life. These skills are called executive functions. There are various perspectives on the number of executive skills or functions one possesses, with some feeling there may only be one, called the central executive, while some researchers believe there could be up to 40 skills identified. Regardless, executive skills enable all of us to get things done and meet goals. For university students, executive functions are essential for adjusting to campus life and successfully completing assignments, including research. However, because students' brain development of the frontal lobe continues past graduation, most university students are, developmentally speaking, children who need support to strengthen their executive skills. Taking these elements into consideration, please reflect on the given scenario listed at the bottom of the screen and list for yourself or think for yourself the steps involved in the process listed on the screen. I will give you a few seconds to think through this. You may have created a timeline or a chart of what to complete and when. You may have listed in your mind the steps of accessing the online library system and searching for an article. Regardless of which approach you took, you likely acknowledged several executive functions that are listed here. According to Dawson, these 11 executive skills best support student academic success. These are descriptions regarding the list of 11 skills. Please take a minute to read through these lists and consider two questions. How essential are these skills to a student's success as a university student? And how successful were you as an undergraduate student? I am sure that upon personal reflection, you recognize how basic and essential executive skills are to one's academic success. Interestingly, when we consider the nature of performing research, we see that information literacy instruction exercises executive functions and fosters their development. This gives teaching librarians a unique opportunity to positively affect students' academic success and lifelong learning. Research processes strengthen and refine executive function, which students will utilize throughout their lives. This is also a good opportunity to address neurodiversity. Students who are challenged with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, for example, may especially struggle with executive skills in addition to the challenges of cognitive development already at play at this age. Executive skills are like the submerged portion of an iceberg. They are hidden, but foundational and essential. They also act as a hidden curriculum of any educational or other type of system. We and other faculty have high expectations for students to perform these skills well, and we expect them to enter university with these skills in hand. However, who teaches these skills? And when? Who directly teaches these skills at your institution? While executive skills are essential, they are also considered someone else's responsibility to teach. Therefore, we must provide learning supports or scaffolding to enable greater success, alleviate unnecessary stress, and to enable students to focus on learning instead of focusing on processes which entangle them. Students who are supported in this way will witness their own development and success, causing their self-esteem to grow. This will enable deep learning and empowerment through well-designed information literacy instruction. Things we utilize every minute of each day are our thinking patterns, even though we are barely aware of them. Thinking patterns are individual, however, the development level of the brain affects them. The limbic system houses the amygdala, hypothalamus, and basal ganglia. This area of the nervous system acts as a default setting and creates emotional reactions and intuitive thinking patterns. While the affect or emotion is essential to buy-in and engagement in research, we also hope to invigorate the developing neocortex region of the brain to empower students to reflect on and critically analyze information. Note that reflection occurs within the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is last to develop, and it enables high-level thinking. It is the same part of the brain responsible for performing and dictating executive functions. It should be noted that executive functions and reflections strengthen along the same time frame and within the same frontal lobe. Therefore, university students will require some guidance, modeling, and encouragement to engage in deep thinking and learning. As an illustration of these two thinking patterns, consider this. It is beneficial to debate with someone operating from a reflective standpoint, but it can be emotionally damaging to argue with someone operating from a purely emotional stance. Considering current affairs, participating in formal debate would serve our students well as a critical thinking activity. As information literacy instructors, we want to engage students' reflection on information that is personally interesting. Curiosity drives reflective thinking, especially when active learning experiences allow creativity and the freedom to experiment. In addition to driving student curiosity for engagement, Critical, reflective thinking is especially essential in modern times. Social media and news media serve as sources of mis- and disinformation, provoking strong emotional reactions, development of dangerous ideologies, and creation of unnecessary fear and division among people. To combat this in the future and in the present, instruction services librarians must foster critical thinking during research instruction, work to become more embedded within curricula, and collaborate with faculty for research project assignments. Mindfulness is an approach falling under the umbrella of contemplative or contemplative pedagogy, which has gained attention in recent years. This involves and addresses the inner person within the learning process. Activities are planned to include reflection and quiet time for reflection. Because learning and personal change occurred during reflection, this approach is more than just feeling free and easy. Contemplative pedagogy is a flexible approach that can be manipulated according to scenario, course, or assignment. You may think that there's no time to incorporate these methodologies into information literacy instruction. And if you are thinking this, then now is a perfect time to free yourself from such assumptions based on past experiences and biases. Offering students a question and 30 seconds to consider it is a contemplative approach. What matters is the approach and your mindset for instruction. You can teach the same material in more or less effective ways within the same time frame. Because contemplative pedagogy, mindfulness, and reflection draw students into their own learning by employing safety, guidance, support, and choice, an opportunity would be missed by rejecting these contemplative methodologies. Mindfulness has been a buzzword for several years, and for some, it may seem overused. However, mindful practices complement information literacy instruction well and may provide great benefits for students who are stressed. Slowing down is difficult for most of us, but the pandemic caused disruption to daily patterns and slowed the pace of most students' lives. A silver lining from the pandemic is increased awareness of life quality and pace. This is especially good timing in our history, considering that we carry our smartphones and watches with us everywhere, and so do students. How many times do we check our phones in one day? You may keep tally marks during this presentation if you like to check yourself. But along with checking our phones comes the sense that we're being productive and accomplishing a great deal in a short amount of time. Smartphones make some tasks more efficient for sure. However, the concept of multitasking is misleading, as we really can only focus on one thing at a time. Mindfulness involves quieting the mind and body and giving ourselves permission to engage with the moment rather than rushing distractedly. Constantly shifting focus can frazzle students, increasing strain, distress, and overwhelm. In addition, shallow reading is the norm for reading on a smartphone, as the screen size and one-touch access encourage skimming and moving on to the next thing. Instead, we need to choose to slow down and to help our students slow down as well. When instruction services librarians teach a class, it is apparent that students are concerned about the requirements of research assignments. If allowed, students will essentially race to find as many resources as quickly as they can, creating a rushed and stressful, superficial research experience. Efficiency is important. However, efficiency is not ubiquitous with speed. We can help students to slow down while also meeting our teaching objectives and meeting students' learning objectives. The slow movement from which mindfulness emerged developed in Italy from concern regarding negative changes within the food industry after the McDonald's company attempted to open a franchise in the middle of historic Rome. The outrage provoked an international wave of rebellion against fast food culture. Then the movement became a flag for anything negatively impacted by rapid mass production. Within our consumer-driven nation, it is logical that students also adopt a consumptive mindset regarding many things, including information and research. This is especially understandable considering the allure of social media to emerging young adults who continually seek peers and their place within their peer group. Regarding instruction, we must be cautious to avoid feeding this tendency towards superficial, surface level accomplishment. The traditional approach of information literacy focuses on presenting research pathways and processes. However, this is devoid of the depth of reflection and engagement necessary for meaningful research. Mindfulness is a contemplative practice involving minor adjustments to attention, distraction, and speed of doing. There are many benefits for students when we apply mindful practices to instruction services and research activities. For example, there are physical benefits of mindfulness. The brain processes executive functions more easily, and the brain also ages more slowly. It has even been suggested that fewer medications may be required for those who practice mindfulness. There are also psychological benefits to mindful approaches to research. It is essential to foster a slower, more critical approach during instruction, to encourage students to ask themselves the big overarching questions like, why am I researching this? What does this have to do with me? Mindful practices counter unhealthy psychological effects of the fast life. Mindful reflection enables students to live in the present moment and become deeply involved in their work, creating a sense of calm attentiveness. Mindfulness also enables students to make sound decisions based on critical choice instead of simple reaction. And students are better able to regulate their emotional through mindful awareness. Student learning or pedagogy is another area on which mindfulness has great impact. When students focus on one task, their retention of new information increases. Also, when students choose information quality over quantity during research, their learning experiences become more enjoyable and more manageable. For example, it is a best practice to choose a few credible peer-reviewed articles rather than several articles less suited to your needs. This approach encourages students to value their own curiosity and to operate from intrinsic internal motivation, leading them to become lifelong learners who are discerning in their information consumption. Another aspect of research is the concept of play and a sense of discovery. You may be familiar with the adage that play is the work of the child. This is true, but adults play as well to learn. I watch a great deal of BBC television, British Broadcasting Television, and along the way, I picked up the phrase to have a go. And for years now, I've adopted this as my personal mantra. And really, this phrase just implies the concept of playing. Here you can see factors involved in play. We apply these approaches every day. Playing is just learning. Something you may notice that pressure-filled, high-stakes situations are not on this list. So what does that tell us about our learning environments? Consider your own play when, as an adult, you just have a go and try something out and see what happens after giving your best attempt. Then you reflect on the experience, analyzing through critical thinking, assessing your play, and learning from doing and then thinking about it. The historian Hausinger was a theorist of play who reframed play as a universal tool of learning to be embraced by everyone of all ages as a right. Being free to think and feel is essential to untethering ourselves from our biases and our internal Debbie Downers. Instead, play allows us to become mindful, to have a go, and to try or wonder about something in a new way. By nature, research requires introspection or reflection to be meaningful, reliable, or credible. Introspection requires focus, a little time, and mental ease. Therefore, the first step as instruction services librarians is to establish a classroom of respect where you guide students as they enjoy the freedom to make decisions along their research journey. Interviewing students about their topics and demonstrating respect for their thoughts and questions will enhance their feelings of emotional safety. Students will sense that the power dynamic is teacher-facilitator and students. The magic happens when students connect with their topic and feel in control of the project. They become interested in their research because it is meaningful to them. Caring about the project encourages students to think critically about the information they locate. This emotional investment elevates the research assignment to a personal learning opportunity. Because it becomes personally relevant, all aspects of the assignment gain meaning and value. Curiosity develops, creating motivation. Motivation powers the search for information and students become engaged. As students locate information that's interesting to them, they think critically about it, analyzing its relevance to the search. Once students engage on a personal level, the cycle will feed itself. Curiosity will fuel introspection to continue the research process, utilizing tools, resources, and mindsets that you teach them. Let me pause for a moment and summarize the presentation through an example. If you have flown in an airplane, you know what it is like to watch the clouds beneath you. As a passenger, you are restricted to the cabin and your motivation is related to the passenger experience. Therefore, you are not concerned about knowing how to fly or land the plane. You are concerned about the people around your seat, what movies are available, and if the fresh air vent works. If the person beside you were a pilot and chatted with you about how to fly the plane, it still would go over your head because flying the plane is not within the scope of possibilities. You are not invested in learning how to fly this plane. However, if you boarded the plane with an interest in flying and you knew there was an opportunity to indulge this interest and sit in the cockpit, your curiosity would drive your motivation to research information about flying before you even arrived at the airport. You would be discerning about the source of your information and locate more than just basic information. Later, when sitting within the cockpit during a flight, you realize you actually have control of the plane, and what you do now matters. And any information and guidance from the pilot is incredibly valuable. You are in the moment, listening to instructions, observing instruments, and manipulating controls. And you feel empowered as you find success during the flight, as all is fine and going smoothly. You also feel secure because the pilot is calm and knowledgeable, guiding you along each step so you can be successful. In a meaningful way, you have connected with yourself through this experience. Every part of the process involves reflection on what you are doing, because what you are doing matters. While performing research is just slightly different than flying an airplane, the mental processes are the same. Students will become engaged in research that is personal, meaningful, and relevant. Students will learn the most through critical thinking and reflection on the information they seek and locate out of their curiosity. Students will reap the benefits of research that is guided by librarians who respect them and allow students to explore an aspect of themselves through their research. Creating the classroom atmosphere is critical to engaging students to their learning. Connection is key, followed by a degree of exploration. Classroom support is also necessary for successful research instruction. Emerging young adult students will appreciate your models of structure and process, as well as applying executive functions inherent to research processes. Reflection and curiosity will develop as you provide the opportunity for students to experience them. Research is about choice and personal inquiry. Once students realize this, they will reframe research work as being meaningful. Also, there are several theories to employ for emerging adult information literacy instruction, but the most important aspect is engaging the student. Hands-on, active learning, addressing problems through inquiry and discovery will go a long way in supporting student success. In addition, collaborating with faculty across disciplines enables instruction services librarians to further embed ourselves into coursework and research opportunities to the benefit of our students. Finally, in conclusion, centering the student within the research experience is key to helping students reconnect with themselves, discover their passions and interests, and see themselves as scholars. These discoveries build the self-esteem necessary to work toward self-actualization and true fulfillment. Research processes exercise students' executive functions to support their educational goals and academic success. Reflective research instruction also provides students with the opportunity to think critically, to engage in lifelong learning regarding topics which invigorate their curiosity, and to develop or establish deep connection to and within themselves in support of mental well-being as they transition into young adulthood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. We have that. I'm gonna have to watch this again because I need to put some of that into my classroom. We have a little bit of time for some question and answers. Catherine, you're willing to do a little Q&A?
Absolutely.
I figured.
Why not?
So if anybody has any questions, now's your time to speak up. And thank you for sticking with us.
Well, I'll jump in here. Catherine, thank you very much. That was really, really kind of overwhelming synthesis of I've heard bits and pieces of what you talked about, but it was a really nice overview, kind of pulling it all together. I really appreciate that. A lot to absorb. I'm just curious if you have a, but you didn't rush, so you know.
Oh, that's good. That's
you gave
good.
us time to think. That's still a lot to absorb. Do you have any particular instruction or class example that you feel was just like a really good example of what you talked about here today? Is there something that jumps out at you as like, here's a really good example of where that happened?
You know, I think there are occurrences where this is very successful and I guess in a regular occurrence. You know, it's working with students. You can identify who would like or need a little bit more motivation to understand that this is their assignment in the best way. It's an opportunity, not just a checklist for getting a grade. I think that one of the best or most obvious moments is when I always say, this is your assignment. This is your education. It's not my education. And everyone usually looks at me like they've never heard that before, thought of it that way before, because especially coming out of so much standardized testing nowadays, students want to know, what do you require and how do I get through this? So it's very performative. And so I would say just seeing the change or kind of like a light bulb moment that, hey, this is going to be a little bit different. And a lot of it is about the mindset before they start their normal research project. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? This has been enlightening.
I had another question for you. Thank you very much, Catherine. You really went into great depth and showed the philosophical background of this approach, and that's, you know, great. And I'm kind of along with kind of what Beth asked. A lot of us librarians don't do a whole semester long class. We just do a one shot. So how can you apply the principles that you just outlined so well into a one shot approach?
Well, one nice thing, and maybe I should introduce this aspect of myself in presentations, is that I can really relate to you, and I am definitely boots on the ground kind of librarian. I teach all kinds of things, and many of them are one-shots, point of need instruction, consultations, reference, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, everything has to be doable in all of my research, I try to make it applicable to what I do, because I also understand that, many of us are in this same situation, and building relationships with faculty takes time and whatnot to get embedded more into the coursework. But I would say that really, if you have the mindset that, for example, students need to slow down a little bit and they need some quiet, reflective time within the activity, that means maybe just posing a question and giving them 30 seconds to think about it. And then that invigorates their internal critical thinking processes. And I think, just realizing that it doesn't have to take an hour longer to reflect is very important. And, sometimes I think we assume that slowing down, using mindfulness and whatnot is a longer process, but really there's no reason it has to be. So sometimes, especially for students who are used to changing their attention every few seconds, they're very attentive to everything because of phones and whatnot, and we are too now. 30 seconds is a long time. And, even when I gave the little pauses, like I tried to demonstrate the methods I'm talking about through my presentations. And so you experienced some of those pauses for reflection today. And at some points, you're probably thinking, did she get disconnected? Right? Even though I was watching my clock and it was only like 30 seconds. So you really just have to be aware of these methodologies and the mindset, and you can accomplish the same things probably better within the same 50-minute one shot.
Okay, thank you very much.
So much to think about. That felt longer than 30 seconds, I can tell you.
I know. You kind of feel like I should start talking or something right away. Like, quiet.
Do we have any more questions? And I'm not going to wait 30 seconds. So if we don't, I want to thank everyone for coming to this presentation. Thank you, Catherine, for putting on this wonderful presentation. And this will give everyone a good potty break and get ready for the next one. So thank you for being here, everyone. Now I'm going to stop the recording and we'll go from, oh, wait. Oh, got it. Okay. Stop the recording and thank you so much again.